Alright, so I don't know about anybody else, but this is exactly how I feel after WandaVision wraps up and we see the please stand by screen at the end of the episode.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. It is the weekend once again, and it's time to talk about WandaVision. So today we're talking about episode 7. Again, if you guys are new to this is going to be filled with spoilers, so make sure if you haven't seen the episode, go check it out, then come back and check this review out, where, I'm going to be talking about different spoilers, things that happened in the episode, give you guys some of my questions and theories on, what's coming up next, and all that kind of stuff. So if you are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. I've been doing videos for the whole WandaVision series, so make sure to check those out. And please give this video a thumbs up just to support the video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk episode 7. So the episode, we've gotten kind of more into the modern times now, and with the beginning, or with this episode, we have more of the Office, Modern Family type of vibes to it, and that's exactly what they're paying tribute to here with this episode. So we see Wanda, she's doing where she's talking to the audience, and she says something along the lines intentionally expanding the borders of the false world that I created, and then we see all the soldiers from S.W.O.R.D., and they're all running and freaking out. So I just thought those two tones clashing were really funny to start the episode off, and again, it just gives more credence to the fact that Wanda definitely, even though we'll get more to that at the end of the episode, Wanda has a fair amount of control of what's going on. But we'll talk more about that later. You also then, you have the two twins, they come upstairs and, they go to their mom and they're like, Mom, our game system's freaking out. And you see it go from GameCube to Atari, I think. And then at one point it turns into playing cards. And that's the first part that we see in this episode, that everything in the house is really starting to glitch out and just change into all these different things. And then Billy says, he makes a reference where he says my head is, it's really loud, it's really noisy in here. And I think my theory on that is because of all of the new people that were brought into the Hex, all the S.W.O.R.D. agents and stuff like that. And then whoever else, we saw the borders expanding. I'm sure some other people probably got brought in there that we haven't even seen. But I think it's because all those new people that got brought into the Hex, and he can hear all their inner thoughts, in his mind. Wanda, when she goes downstairs too to, go get some food and stuff like that, we also see the house glitching even more. And the milk carton, for example, that changes a couple times, and at one point it turns into a typical milk carton, and then on the back we see a missing kid. Now I don't think that specific kid is anyone of importance, but it just kind of goes into the theme of where, and what we've seen is some of the posters for Spider-Man 3, where there's missing kid posters. And that's just been kind of the theme throughout WandaVision, kids, and they were missing for a while, they finally showed up. I think that just kind of ties into that, as well as something, later on in the episode, as far as Agnes goes, and we'll get more into that later. This point too, so at this point we have the intro to the episode, that we've had for each individual one, where they have their little kind of sitcom-y intro, and we see all the different things where it's saying Wanda, Wanda, and at first it was just saying Wanda. You didn't see Vision at all, and I was oh, that's kind of interesting. But one of my friends pointed out from he tagged me in a thing on Facebook, and I didn't notice it the first time I watched it, but they show a license plate at one point, and it says 12/28/22. And that is actually the year that Stan Lee was born. So that was a nice little Easter egg, because obviously don't get any more Stan Lee cameos. So for them to be able to include that in there, I thought that was a really cool, nice little touch to just pay tribute to the great Stan Lee. And then at the end of the little intro, it says created by Wanda Maximoff. And it's funny because Wanda's created this whole Hex and everything like that. So I thought that was pretty funny just to end that. Now, so after the intro, we cut to another S.W.O.R.D. base. So we see that Hayward and his couple people that he had in the car were able to find refuge, and I guess there was another S.W.O.R.D. base several miles from where the original one was. So he's there with these other people, and he's talking to the one agent, and he's all right, is everyone ready to go? We're gonna strike today. Now, obviously we didn't see them attack the Hex today. I think we're probably going to most likely see that in episode 9, because I think episode 8 there might be some stuff that's like still like current, like going on like in the current time, but I think episode 8 we're definitely going to get quite a bit of like flashbacks to see how some of this stuff like, you know, started, and just get like a little like backstory, maybe on like Agatha and stuff like that. So I think we won't see that all out attack until probably episode 9 is my thought. We cut to inside the hex. We see like Vision like waking up, and then, you know, he's kind of like looking around, sees like all the different, like, you know, the circus and the clowns and stuff like that. And then we get to see Darcy, because like I had mentioned, you know, last time we talked about this, that we didn't get to see her, you know, turn into whatever it was. So I thought it was going to be a bigger like reveal, like, you know, maybe something else, but it was still pretty funny. So, you know, during the last episode when she ended up getting, you know, she was like sucked into the hex, she was, you know, handcuffed to the truck. Well, when she shows up in the hex, she is an escape artist as part of like the circus. So I thought that was pretty funny. I know a lot of people were kind of hoping that they were going to pay tribute to her her role in Two Broke Girls. We didn't get to see that, like, unfortunately, but I still thought that was pretty funny. And like when her and Vision start talking, you know, she doesn't recognize him, like, obviously, and he's like, oh, like, we locked eyes, like we had an unspoken like understanding, and she's like, oh, like this guy's like a creeper, and just think like she thinks he wants to like date him. So I thought that whole like initial reaction was pretty funny. After this, at this point we cut back to Wanda, and she's talking to like the twins, and we can clearly see in this episode that Wanda is really starting to absolutely lose her shit at this point in the series. You know, she's talking to like the kids, and I think it's either Billy or Tommy. He brings up the fact, he's like, oh, what was that whole thing with Uncle Pietro saying that, you know, about like dad dying? And Wanda's like, that guy is not your uncle. And so, you know, my initial thought, it's like, you know, and everyone's like, oh, well, who is he then if he isn't? So like Wanda knows clearly that it isn't like the actual like Pietro, like at this point. Like she thought like maybe was, but like at this point that's totally, he's not the Pietro that we think, you know, some people thought he was. It's definitely not the one from the MCU. I don't think it's him with the Aaron Taylor Johnson's like thoughts implanted into him. We'll talk a little bit more about that like later on, but yeah, so it's definitely like not him. Curious, I have a couple like ideas of like who it could like be or what's going on. We'll talk about that. But yeah, she's like, yep, that's not like your uncle, and the kids are just like who the fuck is he then? It's like, who is this guy that you were just like walking around with and saying he was like our uncle initially? And then she just like, she said something like, oh, I'm just really starting to think that everything is just kind of meaningless at this point. And the kids just like look at each other like, oh my God, like our mom is going absolutely batshit crazy. And it was just like, and then she has like a little thing where she's, you know, she's talking to the camera, and she has like the line, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, I guess kind of like my dark sense of humor a little bit. But where she says like, oh, the kids, they literally inherited tough skin from Vision. And I thought that was an amazing line. I cracked up with that. And then at this point, you know, just like in some of the last, like, you know, couple episodes, like all of a sudden Agnes shows up at right the exact perfect time where, you know, Wanda's starting to kind of lose her shit, and you can tell she really needs a break from everything. Agnes, you know, he shows up, and she's like, oh, hey, yeah, I'll take the kids, like, don't worry about it, you know, let's give your mom some, like, you know, her time. And I was just like, ooh, yeah, definitely this isn't looking good. Like, I don't like the fact that she's trying to take the kids and separate them from Wanda. And then, you know, she makes like a line where she says like, oh, like I actually did bite a kid like one time. And I was just like, yep, this isn't going to end well. Like, definitely trying to separate Wanda from her kids. And you know, we see what happens at the end of the episode. After like Agnes like leaves too, we get to see like the house is like really starting to like glitch like all over the place. At like now, like the TV's turning, the wallpaper, you know, like rolls up, which was like really cool. We see like the stork again, which I wasn't sure if we were going to see that, but just like everything is kind of like glitching like in and out. And I really think like at this point, kind of just tying into like what I was saying, I think that has to do with like Wanda's like mental stability, and she's just kind of losing it. So I think like her not having control of that is definitely like affecting her powers and the hex like that. So that's like my theory on that. Then at this point we cut to Jimmy and Monica, and they're driving in like the vehicle, and this was, you know, everyone, like myself included, I think like I hyped myself up a little bit that I thought this episode was going to be the episode where we got the reveal of who the engineer is. I definitely, I definitely still think that we're going to see the engineer, because when they get to like the base where we see like some of these other sword like agents, I believe, and they're kind of separate from Hayward, and they're like, oh, we're loyal to like your mom and like you, Monica. I don't think that woman was the engineer. I think those people were definitely just delivering that vehicle like to Monica. So I still think, I don't know if episode 8, possibly like episode 9, that we will actually see who the engineer was, because I believe Tiana Paris, like, she did like an interview too, like recently, and was like saying like, oh, I can't wait for everyone to see who the engineer is going to be. Granted, that could be her just, she was told to say that to throw everybody off. But I definitely think we are going to see who the engineer is going to be, and I think it's going to be someone, pretty important. So my thought is we'll probably see them in episode 9. We then go back to we see like Vision and like Darcy, and Vision's like finally like, you know what, I've had like enough of this. Like, and he's like, oh, like look at the mime, and he does like the mind thing to her, so breaks her free from like Wanda's like control, and finally he's able to have like an actual conversation with her. And then they end up taking like a truck and like leaving there. And as they're kind of starting, heading towards Wanda's house, Vision, he's like, I have like a lot of questions. And Darcy's like, yep, I got like, I got some answers. So they start, going back and forth, and Vision's like, so Wanda like killed me, and Darcy explains that whole thing, how, she had to, and the whole situation with like Infinity War and Endgame, and how that all happened, and, just the thing with like Ultron, how he was like kind of born from that, and then like Jarvis. So she kind of gives like the whole like general idea of the backstory to Vision, but he brings up, then he asks her, he's like, so what am I now? And, Darcy's like, I honestly don't know. And like, that's the big question that we have like right now. It's like, he obviously can't lead the Hex. So there's some, but it's weird because he can still use like those, the like powers with like the Mind Stones. So I'm really curious to see, like, obviously he can't survive outside there, but he's still able, like inside, he can use the abilities to break people free from like Wanda's like mind control. So I don't know. I don't really have like a solid theory on that one, but I'm definitely curious as to see like what it is, because how is he able to use those powers? And then like we also see that, eventually that all these like roadblocks like start popping up. So like at one point there's like a vehicle, like construction vehicle, like blocks them at the road. There's like a stoplight, and Vision, like, he initially thinks that this is like Wanda, trying to stop him from getting back to the house. And then we see like kids crossing and stuff like that. He's finally just like, whatever, I'm just gonna fly through the roof and go to the house like myself. And Darcy's like, all right, yeah, I'll see you there. And I thought that was funny. So it clearly shows that I would, if we don't see it next episode, because like I think it's going to be a lot of flashbacks, I think by obviously episode 9, Darcy and Vision are both going to end up showing up at like Wanda's house, and they'll probably find out what's going on as far as like Wanda with like later on in the episode. We then get a scene that I just want to like mention like really quick, where it's like Wanda, she's in her house and she's having like the little like monologue like with like the audience, or talking to herself, and she's just like, after everything's kind of glitching in the house, she's just like, I just don't understand why everything's, starting to like fall apart, it seems. And I'm just paraphrasing there. And then all of a sudden we hear a voice, and it sounds like a guy's voice, like initially. And it's just like, well, do you think maybe you deserve it? And she kind of like, it obviously like catches her off guard, and she's like, you're not supposed to talk. That was kind of creepy for me, especially, watching it like the first time. I was just like, that's really weird and ominous. But I definitely just wanted to talk about that, and we see, who was behind it like later on. We then get our, the commercial that we get like, every single episode basically, and this one is, dealing with like depression, and obviously I think this is tying into, Wanda especially. I mean, her whole life has like been filled with tragedies up to this point. She's lost like her brother. She lost her parents. She lost her brother. She's lost like Tony, different like members of like the Avengers. She had to kill Vision, saw Vision die again. So her whole life has just been filled with tragedy up to this point. And so I think that's really kind of talking about like her dealing with this and wanting to create her own reality to escape that. But one of the big things that a lot of people, are talking about is that it's talking about like taking, this like medicine called Nexus. And in the comics, Nexus, there is the Nexus of all realities, which is basically a gateway to, like other like dimensions and stuff like that. So to me, it's like, my thought is, the multiverse. Like, obviously, that's the most logical thing because we have WandaVision, then we have Spider-Man 3, and we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Those three, are all tied. So we're obviously going to be going into, like, the multiverse. So it's going to, like, I wonder if they're actually bringing in, like, the Nexus of all realities. Maybe that's why they're in Westview, because it's, like, it's actually there. And that's why, she was able to bring, like, the Hex up here, because that was, this area, you're able to connect to, like, different dimensions and stuff like that. I don't know if that'll actually play out, but that's kind of like a theory that I might have. But I think that's definitely tying into, like, the multiverse, and we're obviously going to be seeing more of that coming up soon. We then, at this point, we cut back to, or we see the twins, Billy and Tommy, they're inside of Agnes' house at this point. And just seeing inside of her house, it's like, yeah, this definitely looks like a little, like, creepy, a little off. And, she's sitting down with the two kids and she's like, oh, like, a penny for your thoughts, talking to Billy. And he just says, he looks at her and he's like, I like it here. It's quiet here. And then he says, like, you're quiet on the inside. And you see, like, Agnes, just kind of, like, looks at him, and then Tommy, like, makes, like, a comment, and she's like, oh, shit, like, these kids are, like, definitely on to me or whatever. And we see, like, the rabbit, Scratchy and everything like that, but she's just like, yep, these kids, like, definitely know that there's something, like, going on. And I think why he's saying, why he said you're quiet inside is because I don't think that Billy could read Agnes, obviously, because, she's, as we find out, she's a witch, so I think she was probably using some kind of, like, magic, so that way he couldn't do that. But I mean, obviously, just knowing that he can't, and he can read everyone else's. I mean, he's a kid, so he might not just, like, know any better, but it's like, oh, there's something definitely off there. And when she's, like, with this whole thing, like, going on too, she mentions Ralph, like, again, and we still haven't seen Ralph, like, up to this point. I have my theories, like, again, like, I still think, like, Ralph is going to be, like, Mephisto, he's going to be Nightmare, like, one of those, like, characters, because we still haven't seen him, so, and he's been mentioned, like, a number of times. We then go, at this point, we go back to, we see, Monica, and she's getting ready to trying to go into the Hex. She has, like, the vehicle that these soldiers, they delivered to her, and she's like, oh, perfect, like, this is, like, our best, like, vehicle, we should be able to get in there, like, no problem. And obviously, initially, that fails. Like, the vehicle just, like, starts getting, like, it starts, like, going up, like, the Hex, and gets, like, partially sucked in, and then just, like, she jumps out, and it gets, like, spit out, and it's, like, half turned into, like, another truck, so that was funny. And then Monica, she looks at Jimmy, and Jimmy's like, oh, shit, like, no, don't do this. And then, Monica, she's like, I'm going to go in, like, myself, and this is where we get to see Spectrum. I think, because we saw, like, in one of the earlier episodes where we saw, like, her mom's name, and it said Photon on there. I'm thinking because, like, she goes by, like, Spectrum, she goes by Photon, like, in, like, the comics. I'm thinking it's going to be Spectrum just for that reason, because we already saw, like, Photon, but also, so Monica, she starts, like, going through the Hex, and as we see, we get this, like, crazy, crazy scene. It was one of my favorite, like, reveals moments in this episode. We see, like, her kind of, like, her different, like, bodies kind of, like, all, like, warping and stuff like that, and then we hear, like, the different memories of, like, her mom, Nick Fury, Captain Marvel, and just, like, and then, but, you see her just, like, keep pushing through, and then, like, all of her, her different bodies that are kind of split apart, they start, coming back together, and then she gets the blue eyes and breaks through. And once she breaks through on the other side, we see her, she takes off, like, her outfit, and underneath, she's wearing an outfit that looks very similar to, like, Spectrum's, like, outfit in the comics. So I think she's probably going to go by the name Spectrum. I mean, obviously, we'll see. But yeah, that whole moment, I thought that was really cool. I told you guys, I wasn't sure if we were going to see it in this series or if it was going to be in Captain Marvel 2. But obviously, we at least get to see the beginnings of it. We saw, like, her eyes, and just when she's looking at everything, she can see, like, all the different, like, radio waves and stuff like that. So that was really, really cool. I love that scene. We then see, Monica, she finds, like, Wanda's house, and she goes inside, like, completely catches, like, Wanda off guard, and she's like, you have to, like, they're coming after Vision. This is all about Vision. And Wanda just, like, absolutely freaks the fuck out. Like, she's like, get out of here. Like, what are you doing? Picks her up, like, with her powers, brings her outside, and she's like, all you do is just tell me lies. Everything's a lie. You sent, like, Pietro, the fake Pietro. And, Monica's like, no, like, we had nothing to do with that. And they get into, like, this big confrontation. We see, like, all the neighbors. We actually get to see Dottie again, where it's like, she's been kind of, like, MIA. I have a theory, like, with her. We also see the mailman. I think there's something definitely up with him. I don't know. but I just have like a weird feeling about his character. But yeah, we see them like, all outside, and Monica, she just like says to Monica, she says to Wanda, she just says, she's like, Hayward, he's gonna try and burn this place down. Don't let him, turn like make you like the villain. And I love this line where Wanda's like, maybe I already am, and kind of gives this look. I was just like, ooh, like I really hope that's setting up, more what we get to see in Spider-Man 3 and then Doctor Strange. I think it kind of is, foreshadowing that, but I love their whole like interaction. And when Wanda tried to throw Monica, she hit the ground, and obviously she like landed with her powers, and that definitely caught Wanda off guard for a second. I don't think I've seen some people say that Wanda was afraid of Monica. I don't think that's the case, because like Wanda's definitely a more powerful being than Monica is, but I think it just kind of caught her off guard, because she was probably like, oh, I didn't know you had like powers to some degree. And then as we see, Agnes, she's looking over outside and she sees this whole thing going on. She's like, oh shit, like I have to go put an end to this. So she comes outside and she tells Monica, she's like, you got to leave like Wanda alone. She's been through a lot, and basically like separates the two. And you're like, yeah, what's going on there? Like, why doesn't she want, her like interfering? So Agnes, she takes Wanda, she brings her inside her house. And oh my God, I loved this whole ending, scene of like this episode, like right here. She brings her inside. She's like, oh, can I get you like any kind of tea or anything like that? And just like I knew as soon as we got inside that house again with just those two characters, I instantly got that super creepy vibe, like horror movie vibe to it. And just like the whole tone like changed. And I was like, ooh, yes, like this is what I am here for. And, Wanda's like looking around. She sees, food on the table that her, kids were like obviously eating, and it's still like sitting there. We see like, the rabbit. And then we see like a fly that's, like on like the window, like on the wall, fly on the wall, kind of funny. That might be something more going on like there. So I think either that might have been one of her kids. It might have been, one of the twins, or that could be another character. That could be a Mephisto. That could be a Nightmare, one of them. Who knows? But that was just, that whole vibe was really creepy. And Wanda's like, oh, like, where are the kids? And we see Agnes in the background, and she's like walking by and just kind of says like, oh, they might be playing down in the basement. And I was like, oh, and we're going into the basement. Shit's about to go down. And so Wanda, obviously she goes down because, she's like, where the fuck are my kids? She goes down the stairs, and it looks like any normal, basement or whatever. And then she starts walking, and then it's like, yeah, this is definitely not a normal basement. We see this like opening, this like hallway that leads to another kind of almost separate house that looks definitely something from like, the Salem, like, witch trials, are just like really old medieval type of looking thing. There's like vines and stuff like all like wrapped around, and Wanda goes in. At one point we see, which I actually didn't notice the first time, just because I was like, first time watching, I was just like, oh, this is like so cool. But above, when Wanda walks in, up on like a couple of like the doorways, there is some like glyphs. I don't know what those are or what they mean, but I'm sure there's definitely something behind those. And we see like all this kind of witchcraft stuff. And then Agnes, she comes down the stairs and she's like, oh, you didn't think you were the only magical girl in town now, did you, Wanda? And then she introduces herself as Agatha Harkness. And I was just like, I knew it. Like, they did make it like kind of obvious, so I don't think it was like some like super major reveal or anything like that. But it's just like, with all the different little hints and stuff like that they had up to this point in the show, I was like, I knew she was going to be like Agatha Harkness. And for me, like, even though it wasn't some like major reveal, I just thought it was really cool because like I wanted to see that character appear on the show, and that's who it was. I thought they did a great job with the reveal. And we also see I kind of skipped over that, but we see like a little like book, and it has like magic like going all around it. So I know I've seen some people kind of have like theories as far as what that is. I don't know if like someone is maybe like trapped in there, if it's maybe like Mephisto or Nightmare and they're trapped in there, and Agatha, I'm going to keep messing that up now, but Agatha is trying to, break them free or made some kind of like deal with them. So I'm sure we're going to like obviously learn more about that. But then, yeah, the episode, it pretty much, well, it doesn't end there. We get what might be the greatest moment in this episode, and that is the #1 smash hit by Agatha Harkness called Agatha All Along.
messing up everything.
It's been Agatha all along.
Oh my god, like that song is amazing. I've had it stuck in my head, and we get to see a glimpse of what she looks like, her actual witch outfit, which I can't wait to see more of that because that looks totally badass. But then like they pay tribute to like the Munsters and like the Addams family, and we get to see all the different like little moments where like Agatha has been behind stuff. Now with this song, it's saying like it's been Agatha all along. But as we saw a couple episodes ago, where fairly like early on, where Monica got kicked out of the Hex, and she's like, "Oh, it was all Wanda." I thought that was way too early, and I think, even though we only got 2 episodes left, I still don't think it's not just all Agnes or Agatha either. I think there's a bigger player behind all of this, whether it's Nightmare, Mephisto, maybe someone else, but I think there is still one more character, big bad to be revealed, and I think Agnes is working with them. So that's kind of my theory on that whole thing. I really don't think she's behind everything. During where it's showing all the different moments too, we get to see Pietro out the door, where he showed up at the end, and we see the magic. Now with that, I kind of couple thoughts on that. I think that he could very well be the X-Men's Quicksilver, and he could just possibly being controlled by Agatha in that scene or up to this point, because we see that purple magic behind him. Or it could be her Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch. Could be him. Couple different theories, or it could be a Nightmare or Mephisto. So a couple different theories kind of going on with that situation. Obviously we'll see how that pans out in the next 2 episodes. And then there is, if you guys missed it, there is a mid-credit scene. We finally get our first post-credit, mid-credit scene throughout this series. I was caught off guard because usually once the episode's done, I kind of just sitting there, let it play until the end or whatever. I get up and do something, and then all of a sudden I saw that we had a little scene there, and we see Monica, she's looking around Agatha's house, and she opens up the basement, and then we see her eyes turn purple, which I thought that was interesting because they're typically the blue with her powers, but we see all the vines and stuff, and they're purple. So I don't know if that put her under Agatha's spell, but then we see Pietro, we see him pop up behind her, and he's like, "Snooper's gonna snoop," and then the scene ends there. So I don't know if he's either being controlled by Agatha and it is the actual Quicksilver and we'll see him snap out of it, or it's someone her, either her son or Mephisto or, Nightmare, one of those characters. So those are kind of the 2 different things that I have going on as far as that goes. But yeah, some pretty, big moments, reveals in this episode. I was a little disappointed that it was only the 30 it was 37 38 minutes, but that's with the credits. I was a little disappointed with that because there was a rumor going out and I bought into it that the last 3 episodes were going to be an hour. Obviously that wasn't the case. I think though the next 2 episodes they probably will be a little longer because I feel there's still a lot to kind of flesh out as far as just the backstory and just the final climactic battle. It's probably going to end on some kind of cliffhanger, but I think we're going to get longer episodes for these last 2 episodes. There's also a rumor there's a 10th episode, a mysterious 10th episode out there as well. Haven't heard anything really more about that. Obviously no one's confirmed anything. It could be maybe released the same day as episode 9 is. But yeah, I think that the next 2 will probably most likely be longer to kind of just wrap everything up. But yeah, what did you guys think of episode 7? I still think episode 6 is probably my favorite, but there was a lot of moments in here that I really like. So I want to hear what you guys' thoughts are. What are your thoughts on the episode? Are you enjoying WandaVision? Let me know down below in the comments, as well as all your thoughts and theories. Leave them down there. Again, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up, as it really helps with just, promoting the channel and fighting that stupid YouTube algorithm. I really appreciate it, guys. And as always, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.
And I killed Sparky, too.